it gets more inverted by the day. I'm sure you guys are noticing it. It is getting crazier and crazier, and I am very excited to have our guest today, who is going to be able to tap into just how inverted this world is. He's awesome, and I'm stoked to have him here today. Let's bring on Rex Jones, everybody. Rex, very welcome to the show, sir. Thanks for being here. Who is going to be able to tap into just how inverted this world is. Can you hear us?
Is that happening? Is that coming from his side?
Hey, let's bring on Rex.
Rex, you don't have the show on over there, do you?
Can you hear us, Rex?
Do I have y'all double playing? Is that what's going on? I don't think so.
Oh, wow. Into just how inverted. Look at that's how.
I was like, I thought I covered that.
That's how inverted it is. Since this is a recent development, there are now two of me, and my clone is broadcasting from another apartment.
That was crazy. Dude. I was like, I swear I triple checked to make sure that I wasn't double audio.
That's on me,
bro. All good, dude. You should see the things we've had to do in this room with wild stuff.
Awesome,
Rex. Thank you so much for being here. How you doing?
I'm doing phenomenal. Thanks for having me on, man. I've really enjoyed your Twitter since being back on X, and I got to say it's an honor to be on the show. Thank you guys for having me.
That means a lot, man. That means a lot. I really appreciate it. So let's get into it. You are the co-host of The Gray Area. I love the title of that show. Tell us why you started it, why you're back on the scene. You got a lot to talk about. So let everyone know what you're doing with The Gray Area.
For sure. So, growing up in Infowars, I started really being employed as a reporter when I was around 13 years old, and I had a couple of years of experience prior to that. But, being 17, 18 years old during the pandemic, during the great, 2020 age, I took a step back from all of it because it was incredibly disappointing. I'd become disillusioned with Trump. I had started to have viewpoints that were really clashing with my dad's, and I just wanted to take a step back and actually, do something independent outside of Infowars so I could kind of build credibility that I could stand on myself and go, hey, I want to do media. I want to be involved. I've always wanted to do this, but you need to have some sort of background or career first. So I took my other decade of experience in nutritional supplements since before the age of 10. I've been working on that stuff, and I started a company. So I'm into supplement white labeling. I'm into warehousing and manufacture. I kind of do it all. So after like 3-4 years of that, I figured it was time to get back online. Yeah. And my co-host, Tim Tompkins, he's a great guy. We met kind of in a business setting. He's a mechanical engineer. He's worked for defense companies, biotech companies, you name it. And we started striking up conversations about these things. And I was like, well, let's just do a show, man. Like, it's time. So we started doing The Gray Area. And on The Gray Area, we do current events. We, shoot the stuff with our viewers, with our listeners. But at the same time, what we're trying to do is bring up real elevated and elongated timelines so that we can track these events and changes in society and see how things actually happen over a broad period of time.
Yeah. So you were you said you were 18 during the lockdowns?
Yeah, I was a graduating class of 2020. Wow. Isn't that crazy?
So that warped your entire perception of life. Like, were having grown up the way you did that were you expecting something like this, or was that a shock?
I mean, it just seemed like everything Alex had ever prophesized, right. Everything he'd ever said came true that year. And I was like, wow, maybe Alex Jones is always right.
Yeah.
Limited. But, driving down the highway, at least here in Texas, we didn't have the crazy mask mandates. We didn't have, the authoritarian rule that my co-host Tim kind of lived under being up north in like Connecticut and New York. But it was definitely a time period where I realized, even though I'd always known that things were correct, I was like, wow, this is what they really want for people.
Yeah,
this is what they want. And this is the future that's desired. It's a future where you don't talk to each other. Where you wear the mask in the car. Everyone's terrified. And of course, while that's all happening, they surge the border, bring millions, tens of millions of people in. It's all perfect and by design. And, I've had a lot of beefs and disagreements with Trump. I really don't like the current administration, but you have to say from the Biden years, it is very nice, relatively.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not the happiest with a lot of stuff going on right now. I don't even know where to begin. I mean, there's two major ones, and I'm thinking about, first we can get into what was going on today with the peace deal and, all that stuff. What's your take on that? Was the war, and before Rex, sorry, really quick, we just had a lot of people join us from IRL. Thank you guys for being here. We are on now with Rex Jones. We're talking about him starting his new podcast, The Gray Area. And just now to get into everyone's favorite topic, Israel. So we got this peace deal today. And a lot of stuff was said. We saw this speech from Trump talking about pardoning a war criminal. What are you thinking about all this?
Man, It's great that the hostages are released, both the Gaza hostages that were being held in prison and, of course, the Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. It's great on both sides to see that kind of come to an end, and I rejoice in that. It's a good thing ultimately, but to see people kind of wipe the slate clean and go, oh, look, it's over. You know, after 2 years, it's over. So it doesn't matter anymore, and it's all fine, and he's the peace president. I mean, Trump is not the peace president, ladies and gentlemen. That's why I voted for him personally. I remember the night of the first attempted assassination with Thomas Crooks. I went to the office. I was leaving church and I found out this all happened. I immediately drove to the office. I did like 3 or 4 hours live with Chase and then with my dad calling in, of course. And I pulled the cross out of my shirt and I told people to vote for Trump. And I told people to vote for him because I believe they carried out that attempted assassination to stop him from being president because they wanted World War III and they wanted that Ukraine war to devolve. We had Biden sending the long range missiles and all that. And look where we are now. Yeah. We're right back to where we started with the Tomahawks. And then the whole Israel-Gaza situation. I mean, look, we have eyes, we have ears, we can see what's going on. The videos are very clear. It's a genocidal campaign that's been waged on an area that's like 2 or 3 times the size of Austin. Yeah. And half the population's like under 18. Yep. But it's okay. It's fine. They throw out these numbers, 50,000, 70,000 dead, and they say, look, this is our approximation. These are what our numbers say. And then you look at the entire place, it's like a parking lot. Yeah. I think in a decade or less than a decade, it'll become readily and very apparently clear what actually happened in the Gaza Strip. And more importantly than anything, really, how it was all allowed to happen. Like, there had to be a stand down on October 7th, guys. Like, there's no other calculation can come to. Go ahead.
If no one's seen it, I mean, Charlie Kirk was saying that just a few days after it happened on PBD's show. I mean, I've never been there. I've never been, but we know about the Iron Dome. So how does something like that happen? And we know about all the things that happen in this country with false flags. Not saying people hear false flags, they think that means no violence. False flags also mean real violence. Right.
Allowed to happen type of operation. I mean, like my dad had Ivan Ranklin on. He's a frequent guest on the show, like ex-Green Beret. He's done all sorts of stuff and that type of like theater operation. And he said, look, I've been there. Their nearest like Black Hawk base is 10 minutes away from the border. And you'd figure for like the most militarized nation on earth, the second they start live streaming the killing of their own people, they're going to be in those helicopters and they're going to be dumping lead in 10 minutes. Yeah. But we don't see that happen. And, you know, it's horrible that all these things happen for the civilian population, for the citizens of the countries. Yeah. But for the governments, just like 9/11, it's the best thing could ever happen.
Right.
You got an invincible story, right?
Never let a tragedy go to waste.
Yeah. That's how history works, you know?
Yep. Speaking of like what happened on July 13th with Trump and Butler, you know, I knew a lot of people who also weren't sold on Trump beforehand, but that was a major day for them. Like, well, we got to vote for Trump now. And then I remember a lot of them reaching out to me on that day when I think Trump tweeted or Truth Socialed it out, that AI video of like Elon dancing with cash falling on him in Gaza, you know, and that is the future of Gaza. It will be that AI video.
I mean, they got oil off coast. They got all that prime real estate. They've got the most fantastic real estate around. Yep. And is that what it all comes down to? Like, are people not people? And I mean, I guess leading into like the robotic and AI conversation, I mean, ChatGPT, all these things, they work exactly how I imagined Google would work as a kid. Yes. Right. When I got first introduced to search engines, I go, okay, so I type something in here and it's going to give me an answer. When in fact, it just gave you like resources and information tied to your answer. Now that we're there, people can kind of just generate whatever future they want. So they can say, this is how I see the future. This is what's going to happen to this area, regardless of fact or knowledge or anything. They can just pull it out of their butt, kind of like that Trump Gaza video. And then it's sanctified in their mind.
Exactly.
I think people stopped being people a long time ago to them. And I really don't know what to refer to us as now, at least in their eyes.
I mean, slaves to a lot of them. We're slaves. You know?
Sure.
They see us as currency for them.
Eaters. Yes.
Useless eaters. Exactly. Okay. So before we go into the tech stuff, because that is something I definitely want to talk about, this other comment happened recently, and I know you were tweeting about it. I'm curious what if you want to talk about it more, what the implications of it mean to you. Trump saying he might not get to heaven. You know, that was a pretty profound statement to hear, and very sad. You know, like I pray for Trump, you know, and I want Trump to go to heaven. And I pray for even people who are my enemies. I try, you know, it's difficult, but I try. What did you think when you saw that?
Well, you know, it's interesting, right? Because in like maybe like a Catholic or Orthodox perspective, the proper thing would actually be to say, I don't know. But that's if like you're a pious person, you're trying not to be, you know, a hypocrite. At the end of the day, like evangelical, like Protestantism is what's dominant in the country, like all the different non-denominational and denominational forms of it, right? Yep. And the key thing in that is sola scriptura and sola fide, like I believe, therefore I am saved. Right. And if you profess to be a Christian, you profess to believe in Jesus, especially the way, you know, I've kind of heard him pay lip service to it over the years, you know, like, I've lived a bad life, but I hope Jesus will let me into heaven. I hope, I believe, I trust, something like that. But you don't hear that. It's very like negative, guilty language out of him. And it's very concerning for the leader of the free world because, you know, like I think he practices Judaism, to be honest with you. Yeah, that's my belief because, I mean, you look at Ivanka, you look at the whole situation where there he wears a tiny hat, he goes and prays at the wall. Right. But at the end of the day, like, I don't know, to hear that the sitting president of the United States of America not only doesn't think he's going to get into heaven, but like he kind of scoffs at the idea. Like he does seem to have a very guilty conscience.
He might, and maybe he's a believer, but he's done stuff that he just thinks won't get him in. You know, but I believe in redemption for even the worst of people. As unfortunate as that might sound to people, I have to believe in extending that grace. But it was such a solemn, sad thing, especially after something like July 13th happening to him. Like, you know, saved by God. You know, that,
you can't argue with that, right? And you really can't. I mean, I've heard people say, "Oh, it's a psyop, it's ketchup on the ear." I don't believe that for a second. Right. I believe maybe the CIA tried to kill him. We haven't heard anything about it because of that, because that guy was a cutout. Right. But like he was this close to being dead.
Yeah.
Look at what happened if he hadn't turned his head.
I believe he was shot at. I believe none of the official story. I don't like that he says he accepts the official story. Maybe he's lying, you know, but certainly we're not getting the full story there. Like every other assassination, political assassination in this country.
I wonder if that's what they do, you know, kind of like Kirk, but of course Kirk didn't survive. Kirk got killed immediately. I wonder if they do something like that to you as a warning and they go, hey, like, look, this will keep happening to you again and again and again, unless you acquiesce a little bit and you come over to our side and then, hey, look, you're the great hero, but we're going to keep trying to do this to you over
the old fire a warning shot across their bow. Situation. Yeah,
I do think that. You know, I think because it was beneficial, as like sadistic as it sounds, it was beneficial to him. All the people, you know, supported him. Elon, all of a sudden,
I was a true believer for 6 months.
Yeah, solid. Totally,
like rock solid. You know, I was proud to be MAGA again, and I hadn't felt that way since I was like 14, 15 years old. Like a little interesting side note, I was the person that convinced my dad, Alex Jones, to support Trump. I was at Schlitterbahn Water Park. I think I was like 14 or 15 years old. I must have been 14. This is right before my 15th birthday. And we're watching the first Republican debate, the primary debate. And I point to the TV. I go, that guy's going to be president. He goes, you're an idiot. You don't know nothing about politics. And I was like, yeah, but he looks like the president. He's going to be the president.
Wow.
And I kept working on him. I kept going, he's going to be the president. He's going to be the president. And I was so like fixated on Jeb Bush's polling numbers. I would show them to him every day.
Wow.
About, look at this, look at this, look at this. And eventually, you know, but I lost that spirit, particularly, you know, after he didn't defend us during the deplatforming. He famously said, as long as I'm on Twitter, it's okay. Like right after we got banned. Right. And then look what happened. But that incident galvanized me to support him again for like a solid half year.
And Trump used to call into Infowars, no?
He did one interview. He did like a 30-minute with Alex. Someone needs to repost that. I haven't seen it reposted enough. He did call into the show, and he famously said, this is what he said to Alex: you have a great reputation, and I will not let you down.
Wow.
That's what he said. And then look at us now.
Yep. Yeah, I think you guys need a lot more support from a lot of people right now. What's going on, the attacks on Infowars. And we'll get that. I'm going to put that on the shelf for a second. But one of my biggest problems with this administration is the embrace of the big tech vampires. Right. You know, and they've been around. Some of them have been around since the beginning. Thiel's been there since 2015, give or take. Obviously, Vance is a part of that. But like that recent dinner they had a few weeks ago where they're all there. Bill Gates was there. Zuckerberg was there. These people hate you. You know, you and your dad in particular, for sure. They've censored, suppressed, demonetized, villainized, and Zuckerberg in particular, he's been on record talking about the government telling him he's got to, you know, get these people off of his platform. So for me, the total embrace of Silicon Valley is very worrisome. Is that where you're at with that as well, or?
100%. I mean, you look at all the money he's given to Sam Altman and OpenAI, like even Elon to an extent. The real guy that scares me is Larry Ellison. Yeah. Larry Ellison, he's like 81 years old, but he's got the makeup work and like the plastic surgery to look like he's in like his late 50s, like early 60s. Yes. That guy really scares me. And all the digital ID stuff he's doing over in Europe with Tony Blair, giving him like 300 million and all this. And now Tony Blair is supposed to be like a colonial governor of Gaza.
Yep.
It's a big club and you ain't in it, as
Yep.
George Carlin famously said. I mean, I think the advantage of having a real, like, Trump is a boomer president.
Yeah.
He is king boomer. And I think when you have boomer brain and you don't understand technology, I mean, you think about like your parents or your grandparents having to help him with the phone. I don't think he has a concept of how truly dangerous a lot of this stuff is. And if he does have an inkling or a feeling towards it, he just kind of ignores it because it's good for him and good for his agenda, ultimately, the way he sees it. Because he goes, look, I use social media to win. I was popular on TikTok. I blew up on there. That was a big part of winning the second term. You know, it's good if an American company or person owns TikTok now. It's good. When ultimately I think we may have been better off with the Chinese.
Oh, dude, I agree. Larry Ellison is a major issue. We talk about him all the time on the show. I mean, he's a transhumanist like most of these guys. So it's part of why he looks like, you know, the way he does.
Well, it's that Gnostic idea of that matter is bad, matter is evil, and we have to transcend matter.
Yep.
Yeah.
And keep all of us on our best behavior, and which he's on record on saying, he's on video saying it. And the fact that he's, you know, Oracle's now taking over, or he's taking over TikTok, and his son is buying up all these things. He's part of the free press deal that happened with CBS. Like, they're installing a new type of alt media through the mainstream media, whether it's the social media platforms or the TV, you know, old school network stuff, where they're going to pretend to be the dissident voices. And they've tried to ingratiate themselves into that, like the right-leaning dissident voice, but they're completely antithetical to most of what I believe. And they totally embrace the tech oligarchs, who I think are legitimately the biggest threat to humanity.
Well, you see, Shane, right wing just means making money.
Yeah,
that's all it means. That's
so
all
true.
right wing means is to, you got that. That's the one value. That's the one commandment, is to make bank.
Yep.
Like, that's all these people care about ultimately. And I think for Trump, that's a very easy idea to marry into his own ethos, right? Because he's about making money. He's about being the guy with the gold. So he sees all these other people building the system. He goes, hey, I can kind of sniff out the system's going to be successful. I want in on it.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he's helping to build out the surveillance state,
Right.
and this like new media apparatus, which is completely false. And I mean, obviously, they, like, the free press leans certain ways. You know, they don't lean the way that, you know, I would prefer to read. You know, that's cool, they're doing their thing, but the fact that his son is buying all this stuff up is worrisome for sure. I think he's even talking about Warner Brothers now, but all these people don't like humanity. I mean, they're all building these network states. They have their private cities. They want you to buy into transhumanism, which is stuff like Elon totally supports. You know, we report on these artificial womb factories that he's promoted.
Yeah, it's not good. Satanic.
Insane. It's insane. Totally satanic. Totally satanic. And so I was curious about your take on these robots. The robots, you know, when I was a kid, man, robots were pretty cool. But now they're telling me I need a robot to be, you know, I have 3 kids, and I need a robot babysitter. I need a robot to do my laundry. Are you letting a robot into your house?
Right. Well, I mean, you know, my dad has a great argument about this. Like, hey, like, you should just get a respirator. Like, why do you have to breathe? You know, just put yourself on the respirator.
Wow.
We've already ceded so much control. I mean, I don't even live in a world or remember a world where there weren't screens or TVs or at least a computer to interface with. I remember when the first iPad came out.
Yeah.
And I was a little kid, and I was like, wow, like, this feels like space age, like sci-fi technology. But now as an adult, you know, it's just kind of, I use the screen, I use the computer, whatever. But it will get to a point where, you know, these Optimus robots that Elon has, they may look kind of like crappy, and they may look, you know, kind of goofy and silly. In 10 years, that'll be staple. And they'll be everywhere. They'll serve you food. They'll drive your car. They'll be the valet. And when we reach that point, we'll have that demand, you know, for people just going, hey, but just give us universal basic income, right? Just give us enough to live on, give us all welfare, and we'll let the robots do the job. And I'm sure, you know, have a robot in your stead that's employed that works for you.
Yeah.
And like that'll be good, right? Won't that be good?
Yeah.
And then you could spend all day, you know, like watching porn or, you know, just like playing video games, and that's your future, and that's good.
And they say that, you know, that, you know, the ones who don't adapt, we're going to plug them into the metaverse, basically, or whatever, you know, fake world you want to buy into. Plug in. You don't have to get married. You don't have to have a family. You have everything shipped to you, and your digital identity will mean more to you than whatever you left behind in the physical world. Right. And I guarantee a lot of people are going to buy into that. And the robot. That's a great point. The robots of today might move like Joe Biden, but the robots of tomorrow are going to be like Bruce Lee, and that's it's coming right around the corner. And for me, like,
They go, oh, the police, they abuse people. There's police brutality. We'll just have the robots be the cops, and
Great.
once we cross that Rubicon, it truly is over. Once they're in like military and law enforcement roles, and that's where I really see it going.
Yeah.
But beyond even that, my dad talked about this on Rogan like 10 years ago, and people criticize my dad. They criticize Alex. And they say, you boomer, bad takes, you name it, whatever. He laid out the blueprint over a decade ago. Look, it's about building an internet of everyone's thoughts and dreams so that you can predict the future in present time, like Minority Report. Mm-hmm. And that's where we're headed. And once they have that control system, they don't even need to do anything. They just press a button, and they can like make someone a hero or make him a zero.
That's right.
Whether their beliefs align with theirs or not.
Yeah. When I wrote the story on your dad a few years ago, I asked him, everyone's saying you're a prophet, you're guessing all this stuff, you're getting all this stuff right. And I always think of his answer. He's like, I just read everything. I'm just they're saying it all. It's out there. I'm just reading, and that's why I always talk about the overhead view on his show. You look at all the articles out, like this dude has read everything, so he's got the future mapped out because they're telling us, right? And they're just expecting you to be an idiot, not read it all.
100%.
And for the what's next is the pre-crime, what you're saying, and then to marry like this, both the conversations we've been having so far about war, Gaza, what's going on in Ukraine, the big tech sector has just inflated with the war. And I can't even imagine what nightmarish weapons they've been developing out there. We have like AI lavender in Gaza, outsourcing a lot of this death machine to murdering people. And it has like a large error rate. And, what I worry about is at some point that will be turned on the civilians. Here.
Safer because ultimately there's no one you can blame. You blame the algorithm. You go, oh, the algorithm made a mistake. It's no one's fault. You can't get us in trouble for it and maybe make us pay a fine, whatever, but it's the computer. And that's the real, absolution of guilt that they want. They want to just be able to say, hey, maybe our system did kill millions of people, but it was an accident. It was an error. It wasn't intentional. So therefore we get to refine it, try again. And we need even more power to make sure that it's perfect this time.
Yeah.
And people will submit to that. They will.
It's very unfortunate, but they will. You talked about COVID. I was in New York during lockdowns. It's where I'm from initially. And, thankfully I escaped. But I saw my neighbors turn into tyrants. I saw family members turn into tyrants. They were trying to pass a law where they didn't pass it, but they were trying to pass a law where they wanted to make it okay for anyone to be ripped out of their house if they were a threat to the health of your community. I mean, this is what they want. They fetishize being tyrants, and watching them outsource tyranny to your neighbors was insane. So you're totally right. Like people are going to buy into this stuff for sure. And the thing I'm worried about next is the pre-crime stuff. We've seen it in the UK. I don't know if you've been following that story. They have like a pre-crime, like a homicide unit where they're going to scrape your data, probably with like a Palantir situation, and then be able to determine who is most likely to commit a homicide and then arrest you. You're like you're saying, your dad's been talking about that for a decade, but it's here now and it's right around the corner.
Thought crimes,
exactly. Yeah. It's evil stuff, man. So when it comes to what's going on, speaking of Infowars and everything going on there, your dad and Infowars has been under attack for quite some time, and I think it's insane, totally insane, and shows how our justice system is completely captured. Walk us through what's happening, because I saw him make an announcement, I think last week, saying that it's now the judge has finalized this, and I guess they're going to take it away now. Is this what's going on?
Okay, so here's what happened, right? And this is a complicated story. I'm going to try to go through it. I may make some errors along the way, but I'll try to keep myself on timeline, which is something I'm pretty good at. So 2018, we get deplatformed, we get banned, we get taken off YouTube, Facebook, X, everything within essentially 2 weeks of it all happening together. We build our own streaming platform, Band.video. We're still making the videos. We're still making the media. We're still doing it all. But essentially, we lost like 80% of our audience during that time. Around 6 months after that happens, they hit us with the lawsuits. And the lawsuits begin. And, we have listener backing. We have people buying the supplements. So we're able to fight it. And we're able to stay in court for like 3-4 years. But eventually, in 2022, they have the big cases. They have the big hearings. And they just ruled my dad guilty by default. And how they did that was they said, okay, we need every email that's ever been sent to Infowars, and we need it now. We need it within 2 weeks. You have to find everything. You're talking about like tens, if not hundreds of millions of pieces of information that have been sent throughout this period of time. Of course, Alex isn't able to present that all. Infowars isn't able to present that all. So the judge just goes, boom, you're concealing something, you're hiding something. I rule you guilty by default. And then the trial was just to determine how guilty he was. And this is the same thing they're doing to the MyPillow guy right now. They had a guy from some Ivy League university, and I've got to do this. I've got to do a deep dive. I've got to rewatch the whole trial. I've got to pull out these tidbits because I know them. I've seen them live. I watched it happen, but people don't believe you until you've got like really just boom, boom, boom clip list of everything you've ever seen, but I'm going to do it. They had this guy come up and he says, Alex Jones is worth like $300 million. That's how much he's personally worth. That's how much money he's taken from the operation. This is how much this guy is worth. And Shane, you've been at the office. You've seen where the money goes. It goes to the crew. It goes to the massive facility. Alex was successful because he never spent really a dime relative on himself. He spent it all on the company. The big house that he bought and had for a couple of years, he sold that. He had bought it for like a couple million, like 2 or 3 million. He sold it for like 6 or 7. And that was the only reason why he was able to fight the court battle, right? So every asset he's ever had, he spent on the operation and defending the operation. But boom, they just go, look, you're worth 300 million. And the jury goes, well, you know, 10% of that is fair. And the big judgment, the 2.2 billion, that's what the Connecticut people ruled and want from him. But there's like a $55 million judgment in Texas, and that's what they're currently trying to collect, right? So they ruled that 55 million number, and they point at him. They go, look, we had this Ivy League professional come up. He's worth this much money. This is just the reality and truth of the story. Alex has never had more than like 5 or 6 million, like including property, like all together. But they rule this amount. They say, look, if he doesn't have it, the company has it. We're going to chop apart the company. All the Infowars equipment is great, but we built that during the heyday, like between 2015 and 2018, right? So all this stuff is old and outdated, and all the money goes to it, the maintenance, the payroll, and ultimately 2 broadcasts to run the studio. So they come into this operation that essentially it's all listener funded, and they go, look, we're going to take the valuation of what the company will make going on into the future. This is what the people that I'm going to let him myself. Sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah. It's a long story.
It's
so
worth hearing.
they rule him guilty by default or liable by default. They say he's got to pay this money, and then it goes to bankruptcy court. And there's differences in bankruptcy court. There's chapter 7 and there's chapter 11. I think it's chapter 7 where they immediately chop everything up. But we were in chapter 11 bankruptcy because, you know, the business is still profitable, right? And you're not going to gut a business that's still profitable. You're going to try to extract the maximum value for the clients or the plaintiffs in the case if they're like owed money from it, right? So they go, look, we're going to have an auction for this thing. This is what the federal bankruptcy court and judge decided. And, you know, the highest cash bidder, they're going to get the property, and they're going to get the digital assets. They're going to get the name. They're going to get everything.
Right.
A person, a company friendly to us, they bid like it was 8.1 or 8.8 million for the whole thing. And then the Onion people come in. The founder of Twilio actually is the guy who actually runs it. The Onion people come in and they say, look, we're going to bid 1.1 million cash. We're going to promise 10 million of the future earnings of the company. Now, you can't do that because the valuation of what the company is worth is all based on Alex working there. Right. That's what it all 100% is based off of. But the bankruptcy trustee, a very slimy guy, in my opinion, in my view, he ruled that the auction was going to be closed instead of open. Those were the only 2 bids that were allowed, and he gave the bid to the people that bid less.
Right. So
the federal bankruptcy judge, he goes, whoa, this is illegal. You can't do this. This isn't what I ruled on. You had to have an open auction with the highest cash bid. And it all got essentially rendered inert. There was a pause put on the whole thing, and we continued to function like for the past year. Yeah. All this happened in like November of 2024, if I recall correctly. So now we're in a situation where that same judge has kind of washed his hands like Pontius Pilate and has said, okay, it's back to the state court. And the state court is the place where they had the HBO show trial. I mean, this judge, Judge Guerra Gamble, they literally had HBO cameras. They had people doing her makeup in the courtroom when they're filming this entire thing for the HBO documentary, The People versus Alex Jones, and it's back in her hands now. So they've sent the state receiver in, and I haven't been privy to those conversations because I'm not that high level. It's not my company. It's my dad's company, of course, but there is a deadline. There is an end date. I'm unsure as to what that is, but Infowars, as it stands, unless there's some sort of Supreme Court ruling or act of God, it is over. There is a deadline to it. And the reason why we fought so hard, specifically Alex, is like, this is his baby. Like me personally, I love that building. I spent more time in that building than any home I've ever lived in my entire life. And, you know, when this happened like 2 years ago, when they ruled on us and declared us liable, I was so sad. I was crying in there. I was walking through the halls. I was like, man, like, is this truly over? But as time went on and we kind of operated in that coma or like ghost ship state, I've made my peace with it at the end of the day, because I know he's going to go on to do better things, but it is really weird now to go into a place that's essentially condemned, a place that's on life support. It's still there. It's so weird.
It's got to be so weird, dude. I remember when that day that the studio was raided, maybe a year ago, and
they cut the internet.
They cut the internet, and I was distraught and I was really upset, but also laughing hysterically when your dad just drove like down the road to another studio and just kept going. I was like, you can't stop this guy.
Oh, it'll never stop.
No.
And like that's the thing they don't understand is they're in like 1,000 round fight.
Yeah.
It's not like a 12 round fight. And I don't care what kind of resources they have. They will never have the drive that he has to stop it. No. Because you have to be as energetic as him and as motivated as him. And trust me, I'm not. I'll tell you that right now. He's a workaholic. It's all that he does.
Yeah. No, it's impressive.
Yeah, like I grew up there, man. Like that place is my home. Like the crew is my family at the end of the day. I remember like the reason why the valuation was so high was between 2015 and 2018, that place generated $170 million purely off of supplement sales.
Wow.
No backer, no donor, just off the listeners supporting it and funding the operation really through the first Trump campaign and in the beginning of the Trump term. So for me, that was always something I was very proud of. And like going on in private life, like I'm a supplement white labeler, I'm a manufacturer, I own warehouses, I'm shipping, fulfillment, pallet storage, all that stuff. Right. I learned how to do that there because I grew up. I remember when we moved into that building, it used to be in a pet store. We had like 6 or 7 people there, but because it was such an organic and really true operation built off of love, I remember at its peak, there were 78 people in that office building.
Wow.
There were 78 people. And people maybe don't have a concept of like what that looks like. It's huge. Yeah. It's massive. And we had our own warehouse. We had like a 12,000 or like 14,000 square foot place with giant like 50-foot ceilings. It was like an aircraft hangar.
Yeah.
And like that was so inspiring to me because how I saw it grow and really the organicness of it all, it never felt like we were doing something wrong. It felt like we were doing something right. And it was just kind of the universe like rewarding us for, you know, the authenticity of the operation. Yeah. And people point at him and they go, he's a shill. He sells supplements. Everyone reads a code. Everyone reads a code for like 7 or 15% and they get a cut and they do the show so they can sell the product. We did the product so that we could do the show. Yeah. And that was always the way I understood it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. I've lost so many friends for defending Alex Jones over the many years, and also many death threats for saying things about positively about Alex. But like, I don't care. I don't care if I lost those friends. I, in my heart, know I was doing the right thing and supporting, you know, free speech, supporting the message getting out there. And I love that. So there's like video of you when you were like 12, right? Are you that young filming doing your own broadcasts from Infowars?
Yeah, I started doing videos earlier when I was like 10, 11 years old, but he made me wear a mask. He said, you have to wear a Guy Fawkes mask. I'm not ready to put you out in the shark pit, as he put it, just yet. When I was 12, he brought me into the studio and just kind of took off from there. I mean, like I had like over 500,000 views on all my videos, man. Like a big part of me being sad about the YouTube deplatforming was I lost my entire body of work.
It's ridiculous.
It's crazy. We used to put out like 6 videos a day.
Yeah, that YouTube page was great. I wish you could get it back. Was there something when you were that young, like a story that stuck out to you? Like I have opinions, and it changed. It like warped your perception of our quote unquote reality.
For sure. So growing up, you know, it wasn't even my dad, even though like I grew up watching him and I always admired him in that way. And I knew I wanted to do something to that extent, kind of like he was doing. It was everyone else in my life, whether that was at school, like at sports activities, like athletics, you name it, coming up to me and telling me my dad was, you know, can I curse on here? Is that allowed?
Go for it.
My dad's a piece of shit because he lied about 9/11 and how dare you? You know, like that was the whole narrative. So I started looking into 9/11. I'm like, wow, they blew up Tower 7. They blew up a building. And like I was like, hold on, wait a minute. And then I actually read my dad's book, 9/11 Road to Tyranny, which is actually dedicated to me. That book came out in 2002. Wow. And that's really what woke me up. Wow. So growing up, it was really, you know, it's funny now because the Trump, I remember a time before Trump, like I was young and very politically aware, you know, kind of like in the like second Obama term and even a little bit before that. I remember a time when our entire political zeitgeist wasn't defined by one man. Right. It wasn't populist. You had establishment Democrat, you had establishment Republican, and it was the establishment Republicans that hated us the most. They hated us the most. And those are the people I was around a lot. So I kind of got used to that. I never had a libtard experience until like 2016. And I was like, whoa, who are these people? What's this creature?
Right.
What's going on here?
Right.
But it was always, the establishment Bush types, that like those people, that like John McCain and other such types. Yep. And Alex has always been very anti-war. So growing up in a household that was very anti-war, and it was explained to me that, war and death is evil. It's a tool of the devil. I just had a natural inclination towards populism. And I wanted to be educated. I wanted to learn for myself. My dad's also really big on, the poison in the water. There's poison, there's fluoride, atrazine, stuff like that. True. I used to like gum as a kid. He would like take it away from me if I went to the gas station and bought something and tell me about, the aspartame and the bacteria, fecal matter. That's what it actually is and all that. And I was like, whoa, like, what are you talking about? Is this real? And then I look into it, and of course it is. Yeah,
so. I know, dude. Yeah, that's why I love talking to your dad and now you, because, I have 3 kids, and these are, I make it PG for the kids. I don't get too into the weeds of some of this stuff because they're still young, but we've certainly been at like dinner parties and someone serves salmon, and I actually learned this from Alex. They're like, my son goes, that's bioengineered, I'm not eating it. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. It's true though, and he's like, the sky's a weapon. I'm like, I'm proud, but I'm like, am I ostracizing my kid from polite society? I don't know. I don't think I care, but I think it's important to know. I'm not saying it to him because I think it's just funny. Like, I legit believe this stuff. I believe that they're poisoning us with the food. We're very careful what we feed our kids, what we let them drink. If they get screen time, we don't have a TV in our house, because I know it's like, this stuff is very addicting and it's horrible for your soul. So, I'm always very curious, like, what it's like growing up in a household with parents that are very open to how deranged the world is. Like, did you feel like you had to rebel against that at any point?
Not really. I mean, I also come from a pretty broken home as well. Like, my folks went through a nasty divorce when I was like 11 years old, right. Maybe a little bit older than that. And it was during that time I had a real, I had to really worry about my safety. And I love my mom and I care about her. I used to disparage her, and Lord have mercy on me for that. But, growing up where I was at as a kid, especially during that time, my dad's always been a workaholic. He's worked a lot, especially between the ages of 8 to 12. The only real happy time I had was at the office, right? And at home, it was not a good situation. Right. So I had an opportunity to really choose who I lived with when I was about 12. And I went over to my dad and I was like, hey, I want to stay with you. I want to be with you. And he was like, great. Like, I'll take care of you, everything, you name it. But I want you to work with me. Yeah. And I was like, wow, you want me to work with you? And he was like, yeah. So that's how I got involved with all this. Really was, the only place I felt safe was at the office and with him because he took care of me. Right.
Isn't that crazy? I love that. I love that story, but it's also crazy to think about from a macro view of like a place that has been attacked by the world, demonized, villainized, vilified. But I totally understand that, and it's great. And so now you've got, you're doing your own thing with the gray area. Was it, I think I've heard you say, was it these wars that brought you back into wanting to broadcast?
Yeah, man. It was Ukraine and it was Gaza, and it was not having a voice to speak about such things. And it was hearing kind of the milquetoast commentary from all people, kind of including my dad as well on a lot of these topics, especially what's happened around Israel. Right. And I was like, hey, I got to talk about this. Like, I got a good voice. I have a good mind for it. And I watch Judge Napolitano, Dialogue Works, Glenn Deason, all these phenomenal YouTube channels with these geopolitical analysts that are actually giving the real news. And I'm like, hey, I'm not hearing enough of this. So I had to come out and start doing that.
That's great.
So, yeah.
I think that's important. So one last thing before we go, I've been thinking a lot about what happened with Sandy Hook and now what's going on with like Candace Owens in France. Like, do you see that she might be the next, they might Alex Jones Candace next, and like how that might affect YouTube and other platforms moving forward? I'm seeing parallels there. But now it's like the right wing influencers who are so pro-Israel are now doing the dirty work, whereas it used to be the corporate press.
Right. I agree with you. It's MAGA Inc. is what it is. It's that whole corporatist side of the Republican Party. And excuse me, it's what I was talking about before about knowing a time before Trump. I really think we're returning back to that time of establishment left and establishment right. And those are the two groups. And you're either like a FAFO person or you're like a libtard person. Those are the only two identities that you're allowed to have. You aren't allowed to think outside of any other box relating to that. As far as the Sandy Hook thing goes, number one, I'm not rich enough to comment on it or even talk about it. I believe it happened, whatever, you name it. Right. But at the end of the day, they have a good enough story. They take it to civil court. They got that preponderance evidence standard where 50.1% chance that you're liable. you're screwed. It's worse than criminal court.
Yeah.
And the way they're able to misrepresent you, and specifically the amount of money that you have, I was thinking when you asked that question, I was like, kind of, but she's married to that English lord and she's got all that money. Money don't matter. They'll take you for everything you got. They'll say you're worth the GDP of India.
Literally.
They don't care.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I do see a parallel to that.
Yeah, it's worrisome to me because I'm seeing people who I used to be in agreement with like, let's just ask questions. It's okay to ask questions. It's not a bad thing, especially when it comes to we have a long history of political assassinations. It's okay to ask questions, and clearly Candace is very emotionally invested in this. She knew Charlie very well, but I get very worried when I see people starting to say like, we gotta, this is a voice we can't hear, and then they set an example. We saw that happen long ago with your dad. And I am vehemently opposed to that stuff. So keeping an eye on all that stuff. But my brother, it was a pleasure having you on. I'd love to get you in the studio at some point. We'll have to find a way to get you to West Virginia. It'd be great to have you here in studio. Before we let you go, let everyone know where they can find you online. Where's the podcast and where are you on Twitter?
Absolutely. So you can follow me on Twitter at Rex Jones News. That's Rex Jones News with a Z, like REXJONESNEWZ. I'd really appreciate a Twitter and X follow, whatever you want to call it. Like, just come in, water's warm. If you like me, you like me. If you don't, you don't. But check out what I have to say. And check out the Gray Area podcast as well, where Gray Area talks on YouTube and on Rumble. It's a very small show. We're getting started. So really, like, every subscriber is immensely appreciated. And you comment, you give us feedback. Like, we're doing a lot of, like listener-based topics to start. Like, hey, a listener will say this, we'll leave a comment or a comment on X, and we'll go ahead and do like an hour-long show on that topic. And, it's really fun for me because I had stepped away from media for a while. My co-host, Tim Tompkins, he's never really done media before, but we have a very natural fit with each other. So it's really a learning experience for both of us, and just grateful to have anyone and everyone really contribute to the conversation. We're going to do some call-in shows as well. I know y'all are about to do a call-in show, and I think that's phenomenal to do with your listeners.
Yeah, I love it, man. Thank you. Oh, and one more thing. I remember, I wanted to say this. When I interviewed your dad, he spoke so highly of you. Like, it was awesome. And it was incredible. So pro-family, and it makes me very happy to hear those types of things. So it was incredible to hear him say those things about you. And I'm stoked to be following you now, following the show. Everyone should check it out. You did I think the recent episode was on the Fed, something we should all be talking about. It is a criminal situation. But thanks so much, dude. We really appreciate you being here with us, and we'll do it again.
Awesome. Let's do it again. That's what I was about to say. Have me on as much as you want.
Definitely, brother. All right. Have a good night, man.
All right. You too. Bye. God bless.
Amazing. Everyone should check out Rex. It's awesome. I'm enjoying his podcast. So you guys should go follow that stuff.